So welcome to another POFcast episode. I'm Rob Lancaster.
I'm Minagano Kape.
And I'm David Vincent.
Today we're going to be looking at some current events, having reviewed the year that was in the previous POFcast, and particularly looking at the dynamics of these violent cycles in Jonglei and GPAA. What's going on at a more general level in terms of these dynamics, and what's the response is looking like at present, both on the Jonglei side and on the GPAA side, and how this becomes so challenging regularly at this time of year. So maybe we can kick off with just a bit of an overview, particularly for those who are less familiar with what's happening in Jonglei and GPAA and these dynamics. And how would you explain in 1 to 2 minutes?
Yeah, that's quite difficult to look at it, but the conflict dynamics of Jonglei-GPAA, for those who are not aware, maybe I start off with painting a picture of who are part of the Jonglei-GPAA. So on one side, we have the Murle community. Of course, in GPAA, there are several other tribes, but for now, we focus on Murle. Then we have, on one side, we have the Lou Nuer, and then we also have part of the Gawer, and then, of course, the Dinka Boer. So those forms the Jonglei-GPAA in terms of the conflict system that we are part of. But our challenge, since we started as POF, I think when our first entry point, at the back of that, there's been a lot of intercommunal conflicts between these communities for many, many years. Cattle raids and child abduction that has been going on. So when we first entered, we are looking at the social structure of these three communities in terms of how we can deal with them. And obviously, it was quite easy for us to sort of come in and understand how the Nuer in general and the Dinka Boer, how they are socially structured in terms of their cattle camp armed youth. But whereas on the other side of the Murle, their social structure is quite complex by itself because they are based on different age sets. And every age set itself has its own autonomy in terms of how they operate. So it was quite difficult in a sense for us to pin down on how we can handle that. But all in all, we've been really working with these three communities and trying to find ways on how we can address the conflict in general by engaging the target, the youth from these communities. So for us, this is how we have been working for a very long time. And I must say one last part is that the dry season always is the difficult part for us. We dread the dry season in South Sudan because that's when the mobilization or the attacks are left and right. And then within that, now we come in and try to work and try to stop it.
Coming in a year on working with POF, you would have seen from a distance the mobilizations and all these things coming out of Jonglei and GPAA in the past. What's your impression of these dynamics, experiencing it as it were for the first time?
Well, it's different when you read about it than when you are in the mix of everything. I remember when I just joined, Damit was telling me, the dry season is our busiest time of the year because mobilization will most likely happen and will be running up and down. But now that it's happening, I have now seen the intensity of how busy people can get into that. What is baffling me is the fact that this is something that we know, the government know, the authorities know, but every year we find ourselves in the same circle. And with the Jonglei-GPAA conflict dynamic, I think the biggest missing piece is the issue of accountability at the government level, but also at the community level. So looking at the different community structures, it's clear that the social fabric of these different communities have somehow fragmented in terms of communal accountability systems. We know with these different communities, they have specific roles to hold members of the community accountable, but it's not there anymore. So that has left a very big gap at the community level, and the government is not really doing much to come in to hold, let me say, quote-unquote criminals or members of the community who perpetrate issues of raiding, killing of people and cattle theft into account. So it becomes more like a culture because they do that over and over. No one is holding them accountable. So that sort of make our work very difficult.
You've touched on the challenges and the conflict dynamics, as it was. It's worth noting as well that there are many positive aspects of these communities. It goes without saying, in a sense, but you have the resilience of these youth on both sides who are able to be out in these bush areas, days, weeks at a time, particularly on the GPAA side now. Present, some of that's being deployed to not so constructive means, but there is a real resilience there. You have the spiritual traditions, particularly on the Nuer side, and we spoke in the review podcast about the Weideng conference and this kind of passing down of the prophecies, lessons and metaphors that they hold for what's possible in terms of a peace process. And these opportunities for dialogue to bring communities back to those traditional peace narratives, if you like, are super interesting. I find as an external
interesting,
observer as well. But you touched on Minagana accountability and the challenges around that. And on the Jonglei side, at least, we have this initiative that was taken by the county authorities in response to all the mobilization that's happened. To convene the community in UI, particularly the Lou Nuer, and discuss, okay, now let's look at what we can do in response to this in a constructive way. And before we discuss that a bit, let's just hear briefly from Riam, Peace Canal's Deputy Area Coordinator, who just spoke to us on some of the outcomes of the 2-day meeting there.
All people attended, the youth, the women, children, young people, attended. The first agenda was about the issue of the protection, because now the incidents are becoming more unexpected. So Murle the criminal become active in the territory of all the Kayams, abduction, cattle raiding, and then now it become too much. So now, how can you guys protect your resources and also children? And then people are moving from UI to Pieri, from Pieri to Moto, and also from Moto to Patai, and now Pisiba in the bush. So what can you do? So you need to also form a committee that will also accompany the women and children who are always moving on the road. They have the next agenda about the revenge killing. The revenge killing now become another issue. It is like every day, whenever, like yesterday, 5 people were killed in Walda because of revenge killing. And they were saying that now the youth will move out to those mentioning areas to protect children, and they will also, they agree that there will be some committee that will be formed by Payam, like now in UI. If there are women, they will weigh themselves together. If there are women who are traveling from UI to Piri, and then there will be like some 20 youths who will accompany them. And then the youth of Piri will just come and meet in between so that to divide the distance. So these are the things that was the first agenda, which was discussed by DHU and the state leader. Okay, great.
Thank you so much. Okay, bye-bye to it.
Okay, you're welcome.
So listening to Tut, linking that with the challenges of what's baffling you, Minagano, and these questions of accountability, what do we take away from this?
For me, every year or every dry season, I ask myself, the rumor of mobilization often, it starts as a rumor, but it eventually becomes a reality, and then there is attacks. But what I wonder is that, when these rumors start circulating, everyone knows, whether it's peace partners, the government, and everybody knows. But I suppose the question I keep asking is that what role can the government really do to stop this mobilization? So for me this year, I got trouble a lot because we knew about what was coming. And I was wondering, it was at that point where I was thinking, okay, now the government will step in because we know the individuals, right? We know who is leading the mobilization, the current mobilization, the self-proclaimed profit toot. So then the question is, why isn't anyone going to stop them? Of course, they have their own reasons. So for me, that's the part that is really bothering me in terms of trying to address this issue. And of course, the partners are really, they can't go. The partners don't have peace partners in that sense. They don't have their own police force to go and send and arrest someone. But so these are some of the things that really sort of bothers me, and or these questions are not answered. It would be interesting to have such a conversation with the government.
Yeah. That's very important. What I notice is that the government is not really proactive in coming up with initiatives to address some of these issues before they happen. Because even with this meeting that happened in UI, it has been called after the mobilization have started, which is a good step, that the government is taking a step to call the youth to try to disengage them or to try to encourage them not to join the group of youth that have gone for, that have been mobilizing for the raid. It's a very good step. But if only they can start thinking about that early enough and start engaging the youth early enough, I think it will yield better results and it will be more effective. But also what is coming up from the meeting in Nwai in terms of the outcome, it's also quite encouraging that, yes, this is an initiative that has been proposed by the government and the community went forward to make their own commitments on how they can implement the different resolutions or the different activities that they have stipulated as a way forward without totally relying on partners to come and support them in some of these activities. I find that really, really positive.
And if I just add on the back of that, the meeting in UI in particular, what I found amazing was they understood what needed to be done. And very quickly, they did not even think what would the partners do, as usual. So very quickly, the women were tasked to contribute sorghum. And the youth, of course, are the one tasked to go and do the patrolling at the border areas. The local authorities were tasked to find vehicles, and the chiefs were tasked to contribute cows that will be sold to purchase fuel for the vehicles, you know. So there was a proper coordination. And in that also, a lot of the women and children fall victims when they move between villages or between payams. And it was also agreed that the youth will be escorting them at least to a certain point and then hand them over to the other. This is a very self-organized. And for us as peace partners, I think we feel this is how it should go. You know, the community have the answers, they have the solution. We can only come in where we think that they are unable to do. So this is very impressive. And all of it, it's a community-led initiative.
Yeah, I just want to say that we've been talking about this community contribution concept for a very long time, and it's good to see this coming up. I think it's a step in the right direction. We hope other areas can also pick up from that.
It's interesting because we talked about the governmental responses. You were mentioning how ideally there would be some foreseeing of some of these dynamics and to get ahead of it raises the question for us as well as whether we should have planned something a bit more concrete like right at the outset of the dry season. But then it's interesting contrasting some of the narratives on both the GPAA and Jonglei side of making excuses for, let's say, mobilization on one side or making excuses for ongoing criminality on the other side, which is understandable because we're not just talking about raw criminality here. We're talking about some serious violence, gender-based violence and so on that happens in the process. So you have those kind of narratives which are understandable. And then all of a sudden you have the UI County authorities saying, okay, yes, but we want to try and do something constructive here and we want to try and find a way forward. So there's almost like the beginnings of a recognition that if we just stick to these loops of excuses, it's fine and it's understandable in its own way, but it will be back in the same situation the next dry season. So it'll be interesting to see whether this is followed up. And from what Tut was saying, it's not like it's a permanent reprieve. There is still this provocation coming from the other side that they feel needs to be addressed, or it will be hard to hold the community back, even with that desire to keep a peace process going. So, well, time will tell on that. If we turn to the GPAA side for a second, this has also been a challenge, and we spoke about that in the Year in Review POFcast. of getting out to these border areas, reaching these communities. So what do you make of the progress that we've heard from Koang and Lilimoy of the Nanaam establishment and how that's going?
I think for quite some time now, when we talked about the sporadic attacks that are coming from the GPA side, what was identified by the government and peace partners is that some of these armed youth, they are in some places where there is it's hard to reach them basically. So over the years, I think partners have been trying to think and see what we can do. And that's why now the Nanaam establishment is quite key, where now finally the team managed to go to Beach on that corridor. And the idea basically is that we are going to create a center in the middle of nowhere, which actually helps to engage some of these youth, where we think that's where these attacks are initiated from. So by having a presence in those corridors in Beach and Wuno, let's see whether this will change. And by saying having presence, we are also working with the GPA government to properly set up those payams where there will be police posts, where there will be the humanitarian hub, where some of the services will start off. So it will be quite interesting to see by next year, once the place is fully functioning in Wuno and Beach, we begin to track and see the records of the sporadic attacks. It will be quite interesting to see that.
I'm looking forward to that. I think what impressed me is it seems there's great community interest in that project, and we have seen some of, from the report and some of the pictures that we've seen, people are participating in clearing the space for the center to be established, which is a good sign.
And just maybe I can just add, the team had to come back, and of course, due to the ongoing attack led by Tut, it becoming more and more risky. So from the news we've had now, that the ongoing work, especially clearing the airstrip, has to stop until the attack sort of goes away, and then hopefully we can resume. But I think the team is very determined, and also the GPA government, I think they are very determined to get in there and complete this task. And I'm looking forward to the first fixed wing landing in first visit.
All Saturday to go to
that would be epic.
Walk 1 week from Bish.
And it's interesting, maybe on both sides with these examples that we're exploring a bit today. On the Nanaam establishment as well, they were planning to go to Bish to set up in this area between GPA and Jonglei at the time when we knew these youth were mobilizing. All the rumors were strong that they were mobilizing on the Jonglei side. And this is what often happens is you get this retreat, there's this risk aversion, again, understandable, like everyone's position is understandable in these situations. And the team said, no, we have to go ahead with this. There's momentum. We've foreshadowed with the community that we're going to be there. There's this expectation and we're going to go. And they went. Okay, so now it's had to be put on pause, but there's some progress. And it's not like all of these things are convincing one side wholly to abandon any other agenda, but it's maybe these little things that just show that commitment to the cause, going out on a limb a little bit. And that's what was happening with the Uror County authorities as well. So let's just hear a little bit directly from Koang and Lilimoy about the progress so far.
The project is to establish an outreach center in Beach and Wuno, purposely to ensure that humanitarian and peace partners, government partners, all have access to the communities in Nanaam. Also, the project wants to ensure that the humanitarian presence is established in both locations, and equally map out all the villages around Nanaam area so that we are well informed. And this is all is to make informed decisions when partners are responding in terms of peace programming in the location. The mission was very successful. We went from Gumruk with members of parliament, the state parliament for Gumruk, 2 of them, Honorable Stephen Nyakol, and then Honorable James Kazugan. And then we join up with the commissioner of the county, the paramount chiefs, and the church leader, that is Representative Gubruk, and we all traveled to Bishopich. And then we had a fruitful meeting with communities from Kalero, from Ngachibaraches, and from Tangyang. Unfortunately, there were only few from Evano. And then Lahore, which is the first location, was having problem with other neighboring Payam, so they were not available. We had agreed with our partner, the Unity Civil Affairs, to facilitate the mission from on 26 to 28 of November, but that did not materialize. It was turned down in the last minute. And then we planned with WRP to have the second mission takeoff. That was on 6th of December. And then came in the rumors of mobilization from the other side. So our bureaucracies from our humanitarian colleague could not allow them to travel. And so we took it up on ourselves as Peace Canal and popped. And then there was accessibility to the edge of the beach towns where the establishment is taking place. There was one small stream that was just adjacent to the town itself. And so we park our car on this side and then we move our thing to the other side.
We have been received by the communities. It seems like the commissioner sent messages before our arrival, and the areas are expecting us, the Ngatavarachis and Kalero, and Tangyang. Actually, they're expecting us. So when we went there, we found already they are there for our receptions, and it was very big receptions. And also when we briefed them about the project, they were very, very happy, and they received the message with high jubilations, and were very diligent to start the clearance of the airstrip, and put it as a challenge among themselves as villages when they are starting the clearance of the airstrips.
Just to add is that, there was the community is very happy with the project. First thing is that they said, this is the best project that you guys have brought us, because this dialogue are not just enough alone, but if we can have project like this and it succeed, then there would be no reason for us even to move here and there and attack communities, because the reason that drives them to attack communities is because of hunger. And if there is delivery of food and any other services in places like Beach and Wuno, and communities and humanitarian will go there and deliver services such as education, such as health, such as food security activities, then it will end. It will minimize, incidences that are happening, that are being perpetuated by the youth themselves. So they are happy and they're committed to do that work, hoping that the establishment will be a success and the establishment will contribute to the delivery of service to the community in Nanaam. Thank you.
So we've looked at a couple of the responses. We also have the government on the Jonglei side looking to have a meeting later on this week to see how they can respond to the situation as well, and also looking ahead how to be more strategic. And there's some positive initiatives on the GPAA side as well. How do you see things as they stand, though? As we said earlier, it's in a bit of a holding pattern despite some constructive steps that are going on. What does it look like over the rest of the dry season, and what's most important now as we move forward?
I think the fact that we were able to, the current our mobilization that have gone, one good positive thing is that even the Duke County and the Tweed East, and also part of the law, the Uror County, were not fully involved in the mobilization. That's a really good thing. It shows that there is a bit of resistance to mobilization, and that we have seen as, for example, of the meeting that took place in Duke with the armed youth leaders, and also the meeting that took place in UI. So that's really quite cool. But I think the most important part now is that what happens when this the youth that have gone with Tut, when they return, what happens? I think that's what will be quite important. And this is why now we are looking at having a conversation with the Jonglei government to see when they return, are they going to be held accountable? And I think that will make a big difference. And of course, as we are doing this, we are looking towards January, and we are going to have the intercommunal governance structures as part of our ongoing engagement. So these are quite important. And the last thing I wanted to say is that looking at earlier, Minagano talking about being proactive. And being proactive is not only that we are questioning the government commitment. As partners as well, we need to look at how can we be proactive this time or next year during the same time to see what are the things that we can do to fully support the government to intervene when some of the rumor comes up. And I think we need to re-strategize and come up with a different strategy.
Yeah, I think what I would add to this conversation is I think at this point it's very important to see how the government can strengthen intergovernmental coordination, especially with the Jonglei state government and the GPA government, because as for now, they're not speaking like in a unified voice. Like you mentioned, some government officials seems to speak in a tone that suggests they are justifying the ongoing mobilization, which is not a good thing. So if the government from these three locations can work and coordinate their effort, I think it will help a lot. And that is the same thing for the partners. We need to also strengthen our own coordinations in terms of ideas, strategies, but also resources to be able to utilize it in a more useful manner. Yeah.
Yeah, because at present there's seems to be almost a policy at a certain subliminal level that mobilization, if there are attacks on the other side, is somehow justified, or there won't be accountability for mobilization if it's in response to provocation. And then on the other side, there's somehow a sense that, well, if there's criminal attacks that are being launched without our acquiescence, then there won't be accountability for that because it's too hard. So somehow we need to get beyond these narratives, and it's not straightforward, but for us it's very difficult to keep going. You referenced the fact that it's because of the rumors of mobilization that the Nanaam establishment then gets paused. So perhaps also finding ways of getting this message across that when we're criticizing these efforts to mobilize or whatever it might be, it's not because we don't understand, but it's because it's getting in the way of some of the other stuff that we're trying to do. So to then finishing with what we can do, what would be, you alluded to the need to refocus on what we can do differently or better. What else is in our court to be more effective as partners in the way we're approaching this?
I think what is in our court really to move away from this blame shifting and really invite the community and the government to have a really heart-to-heart conversation where we are quite honest with each other in terms of our responsibilities and what we are able to have. For instance, when a rumor of mobilization starts, then how can the government intervene immediately? And with that, some of the intervention that need to be done or actions, the government will say they don't have resources. Then we as partners come at the back of that and try to see. So I'm really looking at early next year or the rest of the dry season, we really need to have a proper sit down with both government, Jonglei and GPAA, to say, look, this must not repeat itself. And what can we do together to stop the next one? And of course, we need to shift a little bit more and increase on the peace dividends, as now we are doing a lot of stuff on the cattle trading and then the peace farms. And then we are doing some of these small things that will fill the gap to engage the youth. I think we need to do more of that.
I agree with you. Just on the point of resources, I think as partners also we need to be very flexible and adaptive in the way we finance and resource certain things, because the recent Jonglei government meeting in Duke did not happen because the resources was not available in time to do that. So I think some of these issues that are coming up with mobilization, it requires a great deal of flexibility from our side as partners.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and being willing to let stuff go from one day to the next. I mean, there were ideas that were coming up last week in meetings that by the next meeting 2 days later were no longer coherent in relation to what was unfolding. So having ideas lightly held, and then if they don't work out, being willing to drop them rather than just plowing through because that is what was planned for logistically. Well, this will all continue to unfold, and we'll hopefully have more to share and more positive things to share as it does over the dry season, no doubt with setbacks. But hopefully this has helped paint a little bit of a picture of the dynamics that tend to come around at this time of year.
Yeah, we look forward to the next episode.
Are you the one saying
No, us.
Do you usually do a conclusion?
I usually say the website again,
There's
but
something it does for the...
And you can cut the other one and
as we finish, we'd encourage people, whether it's on Spotify or YouTube, to actually subscribe or follow the POFcast to get the updates of when we have new ones in the vast sea of podcasting around South Sudan and the world. But for now, we'll leave it there.
thank you.
Is that the conclusion?
Yeah.